Yeah, greetings, agency world. Got the coffee running. Steve Patty to the world.
Hey,
Welcome, a
Max.
gift.
Good morning. Good
Um,
morning.
so, riddle me this. You just posted an article really capturing, I'd like to say it was collaborative, but you really posted an article on your POV, what agencies should be thinking about in 2025. Lots of research being considered, lots of trends being called out. So in addition to that article and some of these interviews that we're doing, we're also hosting an event on Friday the 15th for agencies to come in. I'm assuming by the 15th, most agencies will have an understanding of the things they want to prioritize in 2025. But I hope we can have a collaborative discussion with this point of view and others to try and really inform some of those scary decisions in 2025. So, Steve, what else have you been hearing out there in agency world? Because we're not the only ones talking about annual planning. We might be a little late to the game. What have you seen?
Well, yeah, it's really timely. So, we're talking right now on the 1st of November, but I think the shelf life on this video is going to be, the Novembers for 2025, 26, 27. I think we're going to see that this is a pervasive scenario. And what's the scenario? You've got a lot of B2B brands, companies whose CMOs are facing some tough decisions as they go into the coming year. Pretty much any day that you open a LinkedIn feed, you hear marketers lamenting that the playbooks that got them here are not the playbooks that will get them there. There meaning forward-looking in terms of growth. So the implications for agencies are real simple. If these are some of the challenges facing your clients, invariably, you've either got to be part of the solution or part of the problem. You're going to continue to approach your clients with, here's the same old playbook aligned to the demand waterfall and all this stuff that we know doesn't work. Or you're going to have to come to the table with, hey, I empathize with your challenge that the old playbooks aren't working. You may only know us as a media agency or a content agency or an events and experiential agency or whatever their specialty is. But we've got some additional intellectual horsepower to bring to the table to help you not only think through how to author a new playbook, but we can help you both on the strategy and the execution of that. And ironically, in the last 2 days, since today's a Friday, we dropped our collaborative article on Wednesday. Pete Caputo over at DataBox, for those that follow Pete, always got great stuff to talk about. The timing couldn't be better because Pete's dropped 2 posts 2 days in a row, basically sounding the alarm bells for agencies that you've got to sit up, lean in, and kind of rethink your strategy going forward. Because since COVID, you've got a lot of competitive forces that you're facing on a daily basis that you didn't have pre-COVID. Work from anywhere. You've got basically software vendors right now that are louder on LinkedIn with thought leadership than agencies are. You've got a whole bunch of displaced tech workers and this rise of fractionals. So fractional CMOs, CROs, et cetera. There's a whole lot of forces now that are cannibalizing that kind of intimate relationship agencies used to have with the brands. So interesting time on the brand side and the agency side. But again, I'm a big believer as well that what got you here will not get you there in terms of growth in 25.
So for 10 years, I watch agencies ignore any sign of we should change our services.
Yeah.
They are resistant to it. Finally, this year, I think in the last 6 months, I've seen now more than ever that agencies are saying, okay, fine, uncle, I give up. Like we do have to change our services. I think AI was the final straw, but I think the gig economy was a big factor 10 years ago when it was lower level talent, gig economy. Then with the massive layoffs, you had this senior level talent, fractional gig economy come up. What are some of the trends that you believe are causing agencies to finally rethink like how they're actually going to market with services and not just how they generate demand or how they show up in the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good setup question. I think they're getting squeezed. I mean, the bottom line is, and Pete wrote about this as well, but it perfectly aligns with everything you and I have talked about on, I don't know, this may be our third interview we've done in as many months. Again, what got them to where they are, if you're running a nice little $2 or $3 or $5 million agency business, a couple of founders, maybe a staff of 10 or 20 folks, what got you there just being good at a single discipline, really good with paid media, really good with content, whatever it is, or maybe 2 disciplines. is under attack. Why? Because if I'm the brand side, the vendor side, the client side, right? I've got a lot of options available to me, and I may not want to pay your 150 an hour rates or whatever because I've got hungry people in Central Europe or Azerbaijan in the Middle East or wherever that will work for 25, 30 US dollars an hour. I may have Upwork and Fiverr options. I've got a lot of options available to me. So I think that what agencies are seeing is they're seeing a combination of either flat billing, right? So they're talking to clients about 2025 in the line item that client has in their budget for that agency, maybe the same number as 24. So they're really not able to tap into incremental budget. Secondly, or it may be in decline. Hey, we spent 600 grand with you guys last year between AI and outsourcing and offshoring. That 600K now is a 450K number in our budget for next year. So you took a 20 or 25% decrease. Or there may be growth, but the problem is it's in a single area. You're compartmentalized. The client only really sees you as a tactical executor of their strategy. So you're not getting a seat at the big boy table, wearing your big boy pants, doing big boy strategy. What you get is they go behind the doors, build the strategy, and then they parse out how much are we going to do in-house, how much are we going to outsource, and then of the outsourcing, where do we go offshore in fractional and freelancer versus what goes to agencies. So, there's an old saying, necessity is the mother of invention here. And to your point, I don't think a lot of agencies have proactively kind of seen the writing on the wall and what's coming, even pre-AI, to say we got to get ahead of this. But they're feeling it now, and it's forcing them to change.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to make this a doomsday prophecy. I do want to get to your recommendations. I think you've got some great followable, actionable recommendations that are polarizing, and as ever, always love doing these. And but there's one thing about you that I've really come to enjoy, and that is you've really got your finger on the industry research. What are some of the bigger consultancies saying about some of these trends?
Yeah, well, one of the things that isn't a surprise to anybody who's had any sort of pulse on even reading an occasional Gartner report or on the client side experiencing them themselves is the MarTech bloat that really hit a peak, probably going into COVID. Year on year, you still see 23 to 25% of marketing budgets going to tech. And it's not just the tech, but you got to have smart and not cheap marketing ops or rev ops people to run the stacks. And then Gartner comes out and says, oh, hey, only about 43% of these tools are being fully utilized. You've got a lot of seats licenses that are bought and people are either not using them at all. So you buy 20 seats and you got 8 people using the tool, or you bought 20 seats, let's say for a marketing team, they're only using it a few hours a month or a few hours a week. So the first thing is you've got a lot of agencies who are marketing ops focused. Hey, we'll come in and integrate tools and we'll normalize and integrate data and we'll help you with reporting and unifying the marketing data with the sales data. There's always going to be a need for that, but I think if that's your business model, just trying to simplify, MarTech stacks, you may be at risk. And I've got a call actually next week with a RevOps agency that this is all they do. It's data and it's systems, and they're kind of seeing flat growth, and they're really interested in what do I do? How do I double the agency over the next 18 months? So the first trend is, we see a less is more approach there. The other trend that I'm seeing all over LinkedIn, I'm sure everybody else is, and I've been beating the drum for years, and finally, me, Leah Moroney, a few other guys have been talking about brand forever. We're seeing a real U-turn in all of the brand marketing bashing, typically led by VC, SaaS companies. But that as it may, people are starting to wake up to the fact of, oh, wait a minute, I'm a startup or a small, relatively small brand. I'm relatively unknown in my category. We don't have a real high, as high of conversion rates as we would like on the bottom of the funnel in the pipeline. Hey, maybe it's because nobody knows who the hell we are, and they don't know who we are. We really don't have a trust-based relationship, and no one's going to get fired, so to speak, for picking 6 cents, let's say, in the intent data category. Nobody's going to get fired for picking Salesforce in the CRM category. But if you're number 25 in market share and the brand list, nobody knows who you are. You've got this whole fear of messing up issue that came out of the Jolt Effect book, and right now, particularly in slow economies, people are really reticent to take risky buying decisions on brands or solutions they're not familiar with, because if it goes wrong, it's your professional career that suffers. So brand is seeing a renaissance, a resurgence. Here's the problem, and I write about this, weekly, trying to either in comments or posts offer some advice on how to think about approaching brand marketing. A lot of the tech companies, in the small to medium enterprise space that are a little less mature in their business maturity curve, they don't really understand what brand management and brand marketing are. They don't really know how to staff for it. They don't know how to build a playbook for it. They don't know how to measure it because it doesn't fit neatly into their pipeline dashboard. So agencies have a hell of an opportunity, right? If you've been a demand-centric agency and you buy into brand and demand are critical for growth, you've got a great opportunity to say, hey, in addition to using the 95-5 rule, the 5% of the customers that are in market, we can help you with demand. What about the other 95%? We can help you with the brand, and predispose them to look for you when they are ready to buy and accelerate your sales cycle. So I think there's a little bit of a slowing on the MarTech side. There's an emergence on the brand side for those that are willing to look and listen. The other thing I think that's happening is because of a lot of the tech layoffs over the last 2 years, and company teams are lean. This whole fractional resource thing, I just still think is a huge untapped opportunity. So if I were going out to build another B2B agency today, one of the first things I'd do is I'd look at my payroll and I'd say, whatever the number is, I'm going to put 20 or 25% of my total payroll target number into a pool. And that pool is going to be to retain experts out of the industries for the ICPs I want to serve. I never want to come to a pitch call. I never want to go to a client engagement sitting across the table from a 20-year experienced person in the energy sector, the healthcare sector, whatever it is, and not have someone of equal horsepower on my team, even if they're not W-2, but somebody that brings us credibility. So I think there's a massive trend opportunity of fractional talent floating around. Agencies may look at it as a threat. I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah. I really second that over-index on marketing technology. It's like the modern day boiler room. If you've ever been to one of these MarTech companies, they just have seas of salespeople. And that budget had to come from somewhere. Budgets didn't double. So this MarTech boom took all that focus off of brand. And now people are going, wait a minute, these technologies aren't working. We aren't really getting conversations or have no like and trust relationships with our ideal buyers. And look around, we have no expertise, to your final point. We can't even have those conversations if we get them.
Yeah, and I'm not anti-MarTech. I'm just about, effectiveness always and then efficiency next. In other words, figure out what works before scaling. And a lot of companies have it flip-flop. Let's go buy a lot of tools through a lot of SDRs and a lot of junior level people, and let's go scale for efficiency. And then at scale, they figure out what they've been amplifying and scaling actually doesn't work. And it's kind of egg on the face. Then you got to backtrack a little bit and you got to go, hit a reset button and come out with another iteration. So yeah, again, for anybody watching, I'm not anti-MarTech. There's a hell of a lot of need for the right tools. But it was interesting. I commented on something on LinkedIn at the beginning of this week. It was Monday or Tuesday where, somebody was asking about brand trackers. Brand tracking is a measurement discipline. How do you do it? And how often do you do it a year, right? 1 to 2 times a year is probably sufficient for an initial initial deployment of brand tracking capability inside a company. And somebody, had commented on there, it was a, millennial guy in a software startup, and he's like, oh, but going out in recruiting panels, so your ICPs to give you feedback 1 to 2 times a year on, unaided brand awareness, category entry point association, brand preference, right? If they're going into the market on Monday morning to buy your category, are you on the day one shortlist? If they have to think about 3 vendors that they would trust to do a deal with, are you in that top 3 list? The comment was, oh, isn't that expensive to go do that? I don't know, 20, 30, 40 grand, depending on how big of a sample
Well,
size.
how much are you paying for Salesforce?
Well, here's what I said. I said the same guys that'll say 30 or 40 grand is expensive have no problem spending 30 or 40 grand a year, which is only $3K a month on a MarTech tool and a $110,000 a year person plus benefits to run that tool. And then all the wasted hours trying to reconcile what the output of the tool is in terms of data reporting to fit with everything else they've got. So they got analyst hours on that, and that's one tool. Or nobody has a problem with running, PPC campaigns with 2% CTRs and 1%, 1.5%, 2% CVRs, where you're wasting 95 cents on the dollar, to get a qualified lead. So we'll throw away hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in ineffective paid search or whatever the category may be. But we have a problem going out and figuring out, does anybody know who we are? Do they associate us with certain category problems? And is it showing up in their willingness to put us on a short list to buy from us in terms of branded search, and they come right to our sales teams? So this is the stuff that's baffling. We don't have 50 grand or 100 grand for brand marketing, but we've got hundreds of thousands to throw away on ineffective demand gen.
Well, so I have one more question, because I think we see a trend as to where the opportunity is, but then agencies have to be able to deliver, let's say broadly, brand as a service. The only problem is, in the last 10 years, all the education in the marketing space has been funded by these MarTech companies. And agencies are able to hire junior talent. They're able to train them not on their dollar, but through some of these partner programs.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, they've got a resource on their team that they can bill out at a reasonable rate, and that's their business model.
Yep.
If we start to say, okay, the opportunity is over in brand, what are we going to do? Send them back to like marketing courses in college? Like who is out there teaching people how to do brand as a service? Because it's not the dominant form of education right now.
Well, that is a ball of wisdom there with 2 or 3 great subpoints. So the first part, they're just going out and getting junior talent, training them at scale to push buttons and pull levers completely. And we're seeing how that's working out. It's not working out real well. And if it were, then all these thousands of VC-funded SaaS companies, let's say, would not be missing targets and shedding people by the thousands, because they could just push more buttons and pull more levers to capture more demand. What's happening is by time people are entering the market, they already kind of know who they want to buy from, at least in terms of a handful of vendors. And that's when they're reaching out to salespeople. And for the most part, it's too late to be pushing buttons and pulling levers. So I think that first part you've nailed. So who's teaching this? How are these people becoming equipped? Is the $64,000 question. So in my mind, there's 3 ways that this happens. So while we're on the tech industry, we can go with that. So, there's organizations like Pavilion and others that are trying to do a good job of educating and filling some of those gaps. So I haven't gone and done, in the case of brand marketing, a comparative analysis against, Pavilion and Revenue Collective or any of these other, meetup style, SaaS tech ecosystems to figure out who's teaching really credible brand marketing, brand strategy. So there may be some informal groups, either free or fee-based, that you can do that. The second thing is you can go the apprentice style. That is kind of how I came up through, and a lot of people 20, 30 years ago in their career. You get hired in as a junior person that may not have those skills, but there's somebody inside the company that does. So there's nothing stopping agencies right now from going out and hiring guys like me or others that have that kind of experience and saying, hey, here's what I want you to do. You're 50 and over. We've got a lot of 30 and unders. And I've done this actually before, about 7, 8 years ago, with 2 agencies who said, basically help us set up and institutionalize knowledge so we can create a factory of bringing the 27, 28-year-olds in. And by the time they're 34, they can talk like that 20-year industry executive and really know kind of, again, that it's not all about pushing buttons and pulling levers, and be that advisor. So I think you can, iron sharpening iron here, or train the trainer, that you can hire in either full-time or virtually a layer of experts that help institutionalize and train that as a succession plan. So you're building that up internally. The third thing is then, if you're not doing it informally through trade groups and you're not doing it through this recruitment and training in-house, the third option is, you've got to go and acquire the education through formal education channels. So, that's the third, a third kind of option. It's time consuming, and frankly, it has the longest lead time between expenditure to impact, which is why it's the least attractive. Sending your BBA, 5-year out of college people back through MBA school. I know as a university professor, the sad truth is they're teaching some basics, but they're still not really equipping you for the hands-on. So I really like option 2. I really like the partner somebody that knows what they're doing, help develop your next layer of leadership, where that again, that early to mid 30-year-old director is in a great position to become a VP or a CMO inside a brand. Or in the case of an agency, they become not only an account director, but maybe a junior partner in the agency. But you've got to go get those skills somewhere. Or by choice, what you're saying is, I'm choosing not to participate in that service area, right? And there's no harm in that, saying we're not going to be in the brand game, because the other third piece of the trifecta I wrote about is brand, demand, and expand. There's a whole customer marketing discipline area that a lot of companies are not very good at, and represents wide open opportunity for agencies. And those skills leverage and look a little bit more like demand. So from an adjacency, I'm in the demand business today. Where's the next adjacent opportunity for growth? Expansion and customer marketing is maybe an easier chasm to cross than going earlier upstream into brand.
Love that you've said that. But it's not, in my experience, because I've been talking about this forever. I mean, in service design, I've been talking about expanding customer accounts. It's not the sexy piece. People want to talk about, how do I get more logos?
Right.
They're hesitant to say, oh, hey, people are hesitating to bring on new vendors. So we need to look at our relationships. And I think it's like the same reason that, I would get really offended if my wife suggested that we go and do some relationship counseling. Yeah. To admit that there are opportunities to improve our relationships with clients is basically to admit that the thing that we're most proud of is ultimately subpar, and that we've taken our eye off the ball.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen this in the consumer space as well, right? I mean, if you think about, phone service, iPhones or Android, whatever, and your service provider, it's long been held, and I've worked in mobile, wireless, and telecom going back to the 2000s, about 20 years ago, almost 17. The new customer always gets the bigger, better deal. How many times do you watch TV and you're like, wait a minute,
honeymoon phase.
I didn't get that deal on my iPhone 15. I didn't get that deal, for 4 months free and a pair of concert tickets or whatever the latest promo is. The new customer always gets the best deal. And so the irony is, even in B2B, we see this a lot. End of quarter discounting, hey, if I'm HubSpot, it might be you pay for the pro plan. I give you an upgrade to enterprise for the first year for free. If I can just get those 40 seats to make revenue. The existing customers are like, I didn't get that deal. So it's ironic in a lot of cases that companies talk a good game about customers, but when you look at, and I believe the ultimate truth serum behind any fact claim is, well, where do you put your time, energy, and money? And I remember in grad school, having a class in strategy that was taught by a Harvard professor that was visiting, and this is one of the things that he talked about, which is a company's budget is reveals that company's priorities. Because things that are important get money and resourcing. And if there's no money and resourcing applied to something, it can't be that important. So I go in and I look at marketing and sales organizations and I say, where does the headcount go? Where does the discretionary budget go? How many marketing teams are built with really strong customer marketing? Very few. And in the tech sector, what's happened, unfortunately, is the customer success role that was really kind of launched about 10 years ago, and Nick Mehta and the Gainsight folks have done a really good job at kind of promoting that. You get a lot of this confusing rhetoric around, well, customer marketing, customer success are the same thing, and they're not. And I'm going to give you a real easy way to think about this for anybody watching that thinks I'm kind of just trying to split hairs. Let's take B2B. I'm Caterpillar Tractor, and I'm selling heavy equipment to general contractors or cities. Let's go up into the Northeast, right? Outside of Boston. I've lived in the Northeast. I know what kind of snow is on the road in the winter. So salt trucks, sand trucks, all that, right? So a municipality in the state of Massachusetts is buying heavy equipment, B2B sale. Do you think Caterpillar or Kubota or any of these guys have customer success teams that necessarily have to teach somebody how to get quick wins out of using a backhoe? Now they have training, but there's B2B industries that would do customer marketing, which would be to build a deeper relationship with that Massachusetts municipality, maybe show them other bucket attachments, maybe show them what other municipalities further north in Maine are doing over the winter to better clear roads using their equipment. There's a lot of educating. There's a lot of peer-to-peer exchange between road municipalities and things that, if you're a heavy equipment manufacturer, has nothing to do with customer success. So we know customer success is a SaaS-centric thing, And it's really about quick wins to avoid churn, right? It's churn abatement. Let's make sure that they bless you. Let's make sure that they renew. So customer success is what it says. Have success with the product early so that you renew. Customer marketing is a relationship play. And yes, expansion revenue in the form of upsell, cross-sell is one of your long-term goals, but there are other things that you want to build out of that. One is advocacy, where you can go to a Dreamforce event or an inbound event and host a dinner or whatever and have 4 or 5 or 6 of your best customers seated at dinner tables with prospects and completely unscripted, and you don't have to pay them as a paid endorsement. They're willing to share experiences, testimonials, client reference calls. Hey, how about contributed editorial and content where your customers actually sit on panels? And there's a lot of things that come out of well-executed customer marketing. So yes, man, huge untapped opportunity. I look at staffing and budgeting. I don't see a lot of investment there, and I don't see all the companies, of course, but in my ecosystem or sphere of people I talk to, huge opportunity for agencies. I'm actually working with one agency in Europe, and they are serving about 50% North American tech companies, and this is an area that they're going big on. Is demand is getting crowded. They think expand is a huge untapped play.
So I'm with you on the concepts. Tell me about how this actually gets implemented. It's November 1st. Welcome to November. Right. We're in Q4. It's planning season for a lot of organizations. Probably going to be piloting some new concepts in Q1. What needs to happen between now and then from turning these ideas that we heard on a podcast with Steve Patty into like reality? Because these are not small changes. This isn't we're going to change the way we advertise. This is to the core. This is like an identity change. So how does that come to be?
Great segue. So if I were hired, literally, this is a Friday, you and I are having a conversation. If I were starting a new CMO role on Monday morning, what I would have done in the interview is kind of previewed what I'm about to say, but here's what I would do. I'd be sitting down with the CFO and the CEO, assuming I've got some sort of reporting into one or dotted line to the other, and I'd say, I'd like to build in some time with you to walk you through an approach for us to have long-term growth scaling. And it's important that we get aligned on this, because if we're not, this will never work. But I've got to ensure that we are aligned around the fact that revenue scaling predictable as you can be, revenue growth over time comes from 3 places, not one. And it is that brand, demand, expand trifecta. So I would ask the first question of the CEO. I'd say, Max, answer me this. Are you interested in focusing on 5% of our ICP target markets or 100%?
Well done on the rhetorical question. Yeah, I'll go with the 95, please.
5 or 100. Yeah, 5 or 100, 5% or 100. So where we're going with that is the obvious 95-5 rule. Approximately 5% of customers are in market any given quarter, about 20% a year across industries. And I don't want to debate whether it's 5% or 7%, because it's not 50, right? Every 2 quarters, 100% of your ICP market isn't buying something and 6 months later back in market again. It's small. So it sounds trite, but the first question, and it's so obvious, do you want to focus on 5% or 100%? And in the article I wrote on Wednesday that anybody could find on my profile, I know share when we get the agencies on the phone, I've anchored or hypertext linked to all the third-party authoritative research articles that you need. But the first thing I'd say is, hey, I'm a capitalist. I want to go after 100% of the market. So here's what we're going to have to do. Yes, we're going to do demand gen. Yes, we're going to structure and budget for the demand roller. And it's not, we say demand gen, it's really not, it's leads. It's leads. It's really a lead gen play. We need to help sales this quarter +1, right? This quarter and next, fill pipeline. We're not the lead actor in this exercise, sales is. Remember, sales is short-term, marketing's long-term. But as a supporting actor to the lead actor, we have a role to play and to help them with highly qualified leads in the pipe. Get it, we're not debating it. But because it's only about 5% of the market every quarter, roughly 20% of the year, if we don't build a know, like, and trust relationship with the rest of our ICPs who are going to be coming in market 3 quarters down the road, 4 quarters down the road, 5 quarters down the road, we're always competing at what people would call bottom of funnel with high CAC, because we're arm wrestling It's like a crowded race at the very end. They've got their vendor shortlist, and we're trying, if we're not on that list, woo them with whatever, Apple headphones to do a demo or whatever crazy thing. It's silliness, right? So I'm going to say to you as a CEO or the CFO, hey, Max, what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure some headcount and some budget allocation into building brand, but it's not what you think, that you spend the money now and you don't get any return for 3 years. I can show you with custom CRM fields, 2-time-a-year brand tracking studies, how those investments are influencing the velocity of our pipeline once we get to opportunity, the amount of direct traffic we're getting versus non, on and on and on. So I've got to get you to buy into brand and demand. That's for new logos. Both of those are for new logos. The 95% of the market that's not buying this quarter and the 5% that is. And then I'm going to walk over and say, guys, would we agree our customers are perhaps our most important revenue lifeline, particularly in subscription businesses, right? People freak out in subscriber businesses if you get to 5 or 6 or 7% churn. How about 20%? How about if 20% of your customers exit every year? You've got to go, have a massive pipeline to backfill them. So if our customers are important, then the third area I'd say to you, I need your support, is I need to staff and budget a scrappy team, and it could be only one person. But I need to show some love to get intentional, not lip service, but intentional about deepening relationships with current customers. And we'll measure the efficacy of that across these 4 or 5 dimensions: reference calls, content participation, referrals in terms of zero cost to sale lead referrals, upsell revenue, cross-sell revenue, renewal rates. If you're a subscriber-based business model, that's 6 dimensions alone we can measure efficacy against. Now, if you say to me, well, Steve, that sounds like a whole bunch of new people and budget, I say, not necessarily. It may be budget neutral. It's just moving some heads around and reallocating some things. Or it might be a 10% increase in budget justified over give me 12 months of leash to go pilot this stuff out. And if we agree we're not moving the needle, we'll come back to the original baseline budget. Without getting too detailed on here, I've piloted like head-to-head A/B tests on this stuff inside of $150, $200 million companies where I've been head of marketing as a CMO to show them we can compete at the bottom of the funnel the way we've always done it, or we can predispose people earlier to choose us. So by the time they are ready to buy, it's a lower CAC and it's a higher fit ICP targets. But it takes some buy-in, and you've got to sell that in strategically and make the connection on how it's measurable. And all three of those revenue sources or those paths to revenue insulate you in downtimes. Because here's what's going on for companies that have not been doing brand marketing, and there's not a lot of people coming into an election next week that have been buying the last couple of months. These companies, everybody's sitting on their hands. Money's on the sideline. Nobody's buying. So if you don't have strong customer marketing, you're keeping your fingers crossed you're not going to see a lot of churn. You don't really have a playbook for selling more to the current installed base of customers, right? So I just think it's so obvious. I don't know why it's not obvious to more people, but this is a business I know you and I are passionate about helping agencies and brands make that transition.
I like that term, downtime insulation.
Downturn.
So we're getting some agencies together on the 15th. How would you advise an agency that's interested in attending to prepare for something like that? Like, what's the mindset going in? What are the types of questions? And what are the conversations that need to happen before you get in a room with 10 other agencies that are very similar to what you're doing? How do they get the best use of that time?
Well, the article that I wrote earlier this week, I threw out there that in my mind, and this is not all encompassing list, but people I don't think want a 27 question strategy primer. But I identified 6 areas that I think every brand, if you're a B2B company or you're an agency servicing B2B, there's 6 decisions that everybody ought to be thinking about right now. The first one's a strategy decision. I just went through it. You want to focus on 5% of the market where you've put 100% of your marketing resources. In the case of an agency, 100% of your service design is just on short-term demand capture? Or do you want to focus on 100% of the market? People that are in market to buy this quarter and people that will buy, be in market to buy for quarters to come. So it's a strategy decision. And you got to really start there. You have to start there, because if you say, yeah, the 100% is attractive, the next question is marketing, organizational design, and budgeting. Then kind of what I just talked about, you've got to then look at, even if you've only got a marketing team of 6 people and some outsourced freelancers plus your agency, you've got to say, can I even afford to put one person and some budget in charge of the brand marketing, while I also have 3 people maybe on demand and 1 on expand or customer marketing. So your marketing literally your org chart and how you're going to allocate budget for 2025 and some of the campaigns and types of things that you're going to go deploy have to then align, because they're very different. You're not going to measure the brand stuff based on demand gen KPIs. So you got a strategy decision, you got a marketing organization and budgeting decision on the brand side. If you're on the agency side, it's about service design. The third thing is, then you've got to layer the process to undergird the organization. So if you're going to reorganize around brand and demand, or brand and demand and expand, or just the demand and expand, any combination, you've got to say, well, I got to build some process around that. And I know it's a lot of work that, Max, that you do. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's a process question. Are you going to continue to embrace the demand waterfall in all of its various flavors, from, MQLs and SALs and SQLs to buying units and a lot of that nonsense and arbitrary lead scoring, even though nobody says it's arbitrary, we know it is. There's really no predictive science. Are you going to embrace that as your process on how you organize and align work, or are you going to organize how buyers really buy? And I've got ideas on that for another call. So that's a third decision. Your process belief. What do you believe from a process perspective best reflects how buyers really buy? And you're going to organize your processes accordingly. The fourth thing is technology. Do we view tech as something that enables authentic conversations and communication, or replaces it? And the thing that I worry about with AI increasingly is companies just continue to believe, hey, I can continue to just put tech between me and my future buyers and current customers. And it's all about automation for efficiency. And what you'll hear when you talk to buyers and customers is, I don't want a freaking AI generated vanilla message. I want to talk to human beings. I want answers to my questions. I don't want to build trust with a bot. I want to build trust with a human being. Now, I get it, for low consideration purchases, AI may be fine. You may, I know Salesforce has announced this week their agents. You can build these virtual agents now. I think for low consideration, meaning 2-3 week purchase cycle, low money, low risk. If it goes badly, that's fine. But if you're talking about any sort of $100,000 a year or higher ACV, I think you're going to still see people want to buy from people in the end. So, what role does tech play? And in answering that, if you're an agency, this is how you decide, how much do I want to have a tech-based service versus tech as an enabling tool, but my real strategic value comes elsewhere. The fifth thing, and the questions that I think you need to be thinking about, is where do I, and the I means either the brand or the agency, where do I have the biggest skills and capability gaps, particularly around marketing fundamentals, brand, positioning, et cetera. If you're not good there, you should be thinking about closing that gap pretty quick. Particularly, again, if you say as an agency or a brand, I want to really double down and get better on brand building and brand marketing, well, then you better have somebody on your team that understands what it is and how to do it. So you've got to do a skills and capabilities assessment, I think, a self-assessment, identify your top gaps, and then prioritize, maybe over the next 24 months, how am I going to close those gaps? And then the sixth out of the 6 strategic questions that I threw out in the article that I think are ripe for conversation is, relevancy. In other words, if I'm an agency, do I want to talk about myself and my solutions and all that, or do I really want to feature my ICPs? So Max, if I'm trying to woo you and you're in healthcare, I don't want to talk about me and my 30 plus years of blah, blah, blah and professor. And what I want to do is get other people out of the healthcare industry to talk about how our agency is helping people like you and bring these people to the calls and all that. So for brands, it's the same thing. You're going to staff your marketing team with generalists that have never really worked in the industries that are your primary industries you want to serve? Or do you want to bring people in that have got immediate credibility and they have a network of people that come out of that industry? So getting contributed editorial, and all the things that go with being credible makes that job that much easier. Those, if you did the antithesis of those 6 things, right? If you say what's wrong with a lot of companies and agencies right now, It's the antithesis. So the first question, strategy, they're only focusing on 5% of the market, not 100. The second thing, marketing, organization, design and budgeting, it's all on demand gen. There's no brand and expand focus. Third thing, process, they're stuck on the demand waterfall. They'll all nod like bobbleheads in a room that it doesn't really work, and we all know that lead scoring is nonsense, but they embrace it and they're not willing to move off of it. Fourth thing, technology. Technology is a god. It's sucking the budgets and the head count up, and the stacks get more complicated, and they're driving more wedge and distance between them and their buyers. The fifth thing, skills and capability gaps. They don't understand the basics, and there's no immediate plan to go master the marketing fundamentals. Lastly, relevancy. It's all about them. It's not about the customer. You look at their marketing ranks, go show me people with 10 or more years experience out of the industries that you serve. I'm not saying there aren't some agencies that do that, but I'm saying if I look at a median here on a curve, a lot of them fall woefully short.
Well, I tell you what, I'd show up to a call with you, and I continue to do so. I'm very lucky.
I appreciate that.
But on the 15th, I'm glad we decided to invite some agencies in. Bring your plan. Bring your theory. Here's how I want to tackle 1, 2, 3 of these 6 things, and hear from some others on why that's an awesome idea, or the challenges and the reality of making some of these changes. So cheers to you, Steve. We'll see you on the 15th. And as always, I really appreciate your LinkedIn content. So I continue to follow you and participate in the discussion there.
Awesome. Have yourself a great day.